My new book, Fallen Angels, Watchers and the Witches Sabbat, is really a grimoire which is kind of the cornerstone and the foundational deific mask associated with Luciferianism. In many different of the more hidden or obscure traditional witchcraft practices, specifically from the UK, the tradition of the lineage of the spiritual spark or initiation known as witch blood, a term which goes back to Kenneth Grant, who I corresponded with for several years in the late 90s and early 2000s. The Watchers are kind of a perfect symbolic and spiritual current which enhances and enforces what I present with Luciferianism is that it's empowering. It's about acquiring knowledge, breaking chains of restriction that you put on yourself and that have been put on you, and using primal energies to empower your path and the goals you want to attain from a materialistic or a basic life living goal-oriented concept, or in addition to a spiritual path which develops over time and with validation. With Fallen Angels, as the grimoire itself developed and different methods of invocation, meditation were utilized by trial and error, I found that these deific masks, the Watchers, as I honor them in the ritual chamber, in my votive offerings, calling forth those powers, those energies, and understanding what is behind the symbolic, or what I mentally consider a representation of that Watcher, an incarnation, if you will, holds great insight into how those connect to the practice of magic, the actualization of self-determination in your workings. With that said, using Fallen Angels as a grimoire of initiation into the Luciferian current is actually a very simple but requires dedication initial process. Those interested in that or basic beginnings, I'll tell you, the grimoire provides, of course, the philosophical and the magical concepts, but in many ways the trail going to the Watchers and how to approach them from a basic initiatory standpoint is really based on trusting your instincts, knowing what inspires you, knowing what mental images, the fantasy of when you're alone thinking about those Watchers, those spirits, and the symbolic knowledge your unconscious has. That's why my research and all of these grimoires in Luciferianism go a level deeper with the research, offering you the etymological foundations, the origins of the names, their cultural kind of snapshot of how they approach them. And then with fallen angels, it's really an initiatory ordeal for me that I went through, is because this grimoire is based from the Book of Enoch, which was written in 164 BC. It's not based within a pantheon that Luciferians work with. I don't and have never acknowledged the cult of Yahweh, or later the so-called sun, because simply not because they're considered good or anything like that, but I consider it when you look at how it was created, the origins, the steps of the cult of Yahweh and how it took shape through the Roman Empire, you see how it was just another, Yahweh was another deific mask among many. And with luck and some cunning on people who wanted to control the masses, it became something useful. But the morality, the traits are anti-Luciferian in its core. We don't submit. We honor those we love, those who support us, those who reciprocate common courtesy. When we have enemies, we enjoy the victories that we attain. We think before we act, in many cases, with stratagem. So there's no need for remorse or guilt 99% of the time, because you're thinking before you do something and calculating the full potential of it. This is how magic works. You're enhancing energy, building energy, kind of creating that landfall, that avalanche, which over time is a force that will very quietly shape your goals and desires, and you'll see them beginning to manifest. So starting with fallen angels, choose a watcher that you would like to invoke first with a purpose, a specific knowledge associated with what they offer. And it doesn't have to be word for word. It has to be able to be traced. For instance, Azazel with the forge making weapons. This can be the forge of going through some very significant challenges you have to undertake. So invoking Azazel using that sigil that clears a path in your unconscious, and that spiritual energy that you're invoking within you is really becoming a kind of gnosis that over time it's going to become a part of you. So you take some basic steps. Is the first thing, before you perform ceremonial ritual, determine your goals with a specific watcher. Take a sigil, have it reproduce, copy it, whatever it is, and you're going to want to meditate prior to performing ceremony. And this is if you're just starting out. There's many other techniques you can use, but meditation is a very calming and focusing process. So what I mean by that is find a place where you can clear your mind and continually refocus your thoughts towards the sigil and the mental imagery of that specific deific mask watcher. And think quickly about a singular goal and view that watcher in this meditative process, this calming, controlling, mentally directing process. feel that connection and visualize that spirit beginning to emerge within you, that power as a part of yourself. Then when you perform however you do it, because the framework is very loose, as I found you can use different techniques to attain the same thing, that invocation is going to affirm and direct that process. Over time, you're going to find this connection. And this is for the more advanced adepts. The daemon, the genius, the true will, that idealized self-excellence that will guide you, is enhanced by these workings and these deific masks that you invoke. There's a interplay between the unconscious and the conscious mind. So use those carefully, but don't just look at the book, read it and say that's neat. Use the art. Look at the images that are in that book and incorporate that into your meditation and your visualization techniques, your invocations and your incense offerings, and completely believe it as if it is right in front of you. You don't have to tell anybody else or try to explain it or validate it to anybody else's subjective view. You have to validate it yourself. And the key of this magical attainment is complete confidence and belief in it. That will open doorways for the watchers to arise within your circle of self. Thanks.